Hello, hello, fearless listeners. Are you ready for another episode of Let Fear Bounce? It's the podcast that's all about conquering challenges and facing our fears. I'm your host, Kim Langling, and each week we'll dive into inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to help you turn your fear into your greatest ally. So sit back, relax, grab that cup of coffee, and let's discover how to make fear our bouncing board towards a life filled with endless possibilities right here on Let Fear Bounce. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so happy that you've decided to spend just a small part of your day with myself and my special guest today, AJ Coleman. Now, folks, he wears so many hats, like we all do, but he's got some pretty darn interesting hats that he wears from time to time and day to day. Now, AJ, he holds several titles, including widower and single father. He's also overcome a hearing impairment, job loss, and crippling anxiety. He is also, now this is fascinating, folks, a financial crimes expert. Dun, dun, dun. And you know what? We just might have him back on for an episode specifically about that. So he's also a financial crimes expert. Dun, dun, dun. I just like to do that. And he's also an author, folks. And his book is called Keep Those Feet Moving, a Widower's 8-Step Guide to Coping with Grief and Thriving Against All Odds. And that is available on Amazon. Wow, AJ, thank you so much for being a guest on Let Fear Bounce today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to come talk to you today.
Now, there's a lot. We were talking off mic and we got like so off track, but those are the best kind of conversations. We are going to have you back on, so all you out there listening, for him to come and chat about his financial crimes expertise, and he's going to share some tips and stuff like that about fraud and scam and keeping your identity safe and all of that. And that's going to come up here in a few months. So thank you for being willing to come back on before we even really had a chance to talk. So, hey, yay
Yeah,
us.
it's amazing what you learn when you just openly discuss with individuals and learn a little bit more about who they are. And a lot of people, I think, get fascinated with celebrities and social media influencers, but the real interesting people are people just like us and the listeners.
I could not agree more. That is so well said. Seriously, because I love talking to people, learning how they tick, why they think the way they do. I might not understand it and might not agree all the time, but that doesn't matter. I enjoy learning and meeting new people and just, it's just a fun experience. And I think that we should all be a little more open to that and a little more accepting, and maybe the world wouldn't be quite as divided.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of head scratching moment that we do in life,
Yeah.
right? And every day you wake up and you have a plan for how you begin your day, and then midway through the first hour you realize the whole day has gone astray.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I
what
find myself laughing out loud saying, wow, and I thought that I had my day planned out. Silly me.
Oh yeah, definitely that's how it is. And that's where I think the best days are, with just when life just takes you on a journey. And some people like structure, others like the free flow. I think both are important at times. In days like today, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know where opportunities come through. And in society, we're very quick to say no off of everything. What if we
Yeah,
say yes to more things? Would we be happier? Would we be more open to trying new things? And
right.
perhaps maybe we can solve some of the world's greatest problems, but that's taking a big
I've
step.
had many conversation with people, and we will jokingly say, well, we just solved all the world's problems in the last half hour. If people would just listen to us.
Yeah, that, that's true.
I
That is,
know.
that is true. What was that phrase? I think we have two ears and one mouth, right? But sometimes the one mouth is bigger than the two ears. So,
Exactly. Yes, you're right. You're right. Well, I want to jump in because a few of the things that you mentioned, fear plays a part in that. I think, like with society and people in general, not wanting to say yes to those opportunities that might be sitting right in the fear. Fear has so much to do with that. And that's why I love having folks like you on. You wear so many different hats. You've been through the ringer.
I
As
have.
we all have. Everybody has their trauma and their really tough stuff. Your journey, your tough, bumpy road, and that's probably putting it so lightly. First off, you're a widower. You lost your wife at a very young age to cancer. Now, that alone, a diagnosis is traumatizing, but then at such a young age, and you were new parents at the time, correct?
I was. My daughter was 2 months old when my wife, her mother, was diagnosed with brain cancer. And nothing could have prepared us at that time for the diagnosis. Nothing could have prepared us for what would come. I
That
think
I can't even imagine. So I can't even pretend to put myself in your shoes.
I was 32 years old when the diagnosis, 33 is when she passed. And raising my daughter for the first 9 years of her life as a single dad. And where I can speak openly is where I openly share with others is how you go through the storybook ending on certain tragedies, life-changing instances that help you bring closure to what has happened to enable you to speak more about it at a later time, whether it's with a smile because you know you've done everything you can and the memory remains with you, or you've done everything you could and the memory just could not escape you, but just knowing deep down that you have some sort of closure enables you to continue to move on through your journey in life. And a lot of people just get stuck in their current path. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to turn to. They just, in a sense, give up and say, well, this is how my life is always going to be. And there are other people, like many of your listeners, that take a challenge and just take that as a commitment to thrive harder. And when you look back, it's a sense of accomplishment. And that's what we have today. I miss my wife every day. I know my daughter misses her mother, but together we keep her legacy alive. And this is what brings me comfort, knowing that I had given her a fairy tale ending at the time when she passed to enable me to move forward in life.
Probably folks out there listening that can resonate with your story, and that's just part of your story. So going through all of that, and you said your daughter was 2 months old when your wife was diagnosed. So
Yes,
you raised her from, bottle feeding, infant.
I did.
And so
Uh,
what types of fears, and I am sure there were a few, came through because you were dealing with grief, but you had to give your attention and your love and care to this very small human. How were you able to look past the fear of, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this on my own? Oh my gosh, am I going to be a good enough dad? What types of thoughts and how did you bust through those?
what's interesting is I never really had time to settle in what I call with the dual control parenting, right? We had 2 months and my wife was diagnosed. So it wasn't like I had a before and after snapshot of what life was really like. I only knew, well, I got to take care of my wife, take care of my daughter, and I just moved forward. So the fear itself wasn't necessarily on, well, am I going to be a good father? I think the fear was more predicated on, could I find balance back in my life, working a full time job, being a full time caretaker, being the dad, trying to move to Chicago, where we were living in Phoenix at the time of the diagnosis, so my wife can be with her family, looking for another job. More of that fear was, it's like, how do I function? How do I maintain a sense of calmness through this whole ordeal where everybody around me was anticipating at some point I would have a breakdown? And what's interesting, those that know me and know my story, it's almost I've been prepared my entire life for tough times. And when things get tough, challenging, I actually find new motivation. I find new energy levels that I've never known about to propel me through it. And that what enables me to speak today so confidently with the passion that I have to helping others, no matter what their challenges may be, no matter what their fears, you have something alive within you. Rely on that.
Well said. And I like how you said, the challenges that you face in life, they were kind of motivating to you. Now, not
Mhm.
everybody's built that way. I personally am. I am built that way because some of the stuff I've personally went through makes me wonder how I'm still standing sometimes. But I have that mindset where it's all right, Kim, pull up your big girl panties, time to go. Keep
Yeah,
moving, keep moving. Not everybody has that mindset. Like you had also mentioned earlier, sometimes that fear, the folks get stuck there. What's a good little nugget that you can toss out to those folks that are listening right now at any age that might feel stuck, like they've went through a traumatic experience or the loss of a loved one, maybe it's divorce, loss of a job, whatever the case may be that's life altering. What's a little nugget you can toss out to them, just to give them that little motivation? Because they might not have that mindset of, let's go, I'm just going to plow through this.
one common element in what you just described all comes back to grief. They're mourning some sort of loss, whether it's a physical loss, whether it's a financial loss, companion loss, any type of thing. And anytime you're in a grief, you have a tendency to focus on yourself and asking questions. Why did this happen? Why me? Why couldn't this happen to somebody else? Things were going so good. Why now? The way to transition is to start thinking about where are you going? Where am I going to get to? How am I going to get to that process? And when you start transitioning that mindset from why to where, and I use this in terms to keep those feet moving, you're always creating action, motion around. Some people might equate it to, the why and how principle, but for our sake, we're going to keep it to where. This is how you can start getting yourself more motivated. When you start moving to that where functionality within your mindset, you realize you're letting go of some of the grief and you're taking steps forward to what your goals are, where you want to achieve in life. Grief is a part of who we are. It's how we respond to the grief that separates us from the past and our future.
Thank you for sharing that. And I hope folks out there that you caught that. Hope you're picking up what he was throwing down, folks.
I do use a lot of analogies and a lot of different segments to try to resonate with others. And
Well, you have to paint a picture, because for most folks I have found, and I know for myself, if I'm able to paint a picture in my head by listening to someone, by the words that you're using, and I can paint a mental picture on my little mental chalkboard, it resonates. I'm able to grasp it much easier when folks share stories like that or analogies like that. I think that works well for most folks, that they receive it well. Well, you're also an author, and I've found that most authors are pretty good at painting pictures with their words.
it took time. Being,
Yes, it's
I never thought I would ever write a book. Yeah, English writing was not my best class. And if you would have told me, oh, well, you're going to write a book later in life, I probably would have not have really understood that. But what I found through writing, it could also be very therapeutic to get over some of your own personal fears
oh,
in life.
indeed.
And having that opportunity, that springboard to sort of get it out of your system, to share with others, it's definitely scary in a sense because you don't know how people are going to respond. You don't know where the general public is going to really understand you. And in today's society, we're very quick to criticize, point out deficiency, use the word, well, you're wrong. Well, that's not how it should be. But the writing element was more to bring out some of those fears that I've had. I never thought I would put together a book. And I can definitely put that as my list of accomplishments. And I'll put it out there. Everybody keeps asking if it's going to be a sequel or another one, and I'm just like, I'm just still trying to get the first one out the
Yeah.
door, in a sense,
Yeah.
right? And still trying to come to grips on what I've done and being open as I have, because I have shared some of my biggest fears of when I was a child, overcoming anxiety, working on what went down the last few hours of my wife's life, and sharing some of those intimate personal thoughts that I had with her, and painting this whole thing. But writing is, you have to get your thoughts out in some capacity. And that also takes you from that why to the where, because once you get it out, you don't know where it's going to head, and where you're going to meet people like yourself and meet people like this audience who's listening, and having that ability to touch each and every one of those people to some capacity.
And you never know who you're going to impact,
Right.
because there is someone out there that needs your specific message. And
Yes.
that's how I've always believed. It's so easy as an author, and you had mentioned, there's some fears in that too, getting your story out there into the world, or just your words out into the world, because people are so quick to judge. I found early on, the first time that I put something out into the world in a book, I was a co-author in an anthology, and it was my personal story, and I kept it very general. And even that was super difficult to write
Sure.
and think, oh, people are going to look at me different now. Oh, they're going to judge me. And the editor, who was a beautiful lady, she said, Kim, your words aren't for everyone,
Yeah.
but for those that read it, those words are for, that it lands in their hands for a reason, and those are your readers, they're going to resonate with you and be so very thankful that you shared, because they won't feel alone anymore. Just all the other ones that are judging and putting down and tearing apart, they're not your readers, so don't pay attention.
That's great advice.
I've never forgotten that.
That's great advice. I mean, that is definitely one of your big fears of, as an author, who's going to read this? What are they going to say? And you look back at your sense of accomplishment, thinking when it gets released that everybody in the world is going to be reading about this and commenting it, and you're going to be able to be this instant success. But the reality is, it takes a lot of work to get out there. It takes a lot of work to bring people together to share your story. And unfortunately, there are people who, when they learn things about you, it does change their perception of who you are and their viewpoint. Maybe they had you on a pedestal, and now they feel like, oh, well, person's not who I thought they were. We're not going to have any sort of relations. Others may decide to put you on a pedestal and use this as a life changing opportunity. But I do like where your editor went, right? And it's hard to think of, like, well, who's your target audience? Who are you writing for? Sometimes you're just writing for yourself. I needed to write something to share for my daughter and let her know who her dad was before I got too old, right? And the joke was, when you dedicate a book to somebody or to something. I once was told that I couldn't write. So at first I was thinking about dedicating the book to the a-hole who said I couldn't write. Look where I'm at now. But then I thought about my audience a little bit and said, okay, well, who am I really writing this book for? So I ended up dedicating it to my daughter so she can finally understand my dad jokes, which she rolls her eyes every time I have something to say about that. But
Well, of course she does. That's
that
part of
would
her
make
job.
oh my God. I There are things that she does. I have no understanding of where she got this from. The only conclusion I have is that maybe it's not in my gene pool. Maybe it came from the other gene pool.
From the other side.
Yeah. But the greatest fear we all have, people will say, is failure, right? Or failure to do certain things. And I don't know if that's the best way to say failure is the biggest fear. I think it's trusting yourself is one of our greatest fears, is having that ability when things get challenging that you can overcome. Having that ability to take on a little bit more and pushing yourself through when it's time for bed with the kids, to have the strength to read that story to them, is having that trust within yourself that you're going to make your life the very best. So when you wake up one day, when you're 150 years old, you can look back at your life with positive and with no regrets. And that's where that trust is. That's where the biggest, I think, fear is people just not trusting themselves.
Trust is a big one all throughout life. And I've shared before, a dear friend of mine, she was actually my fourth grade teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me up one day, random, seemingly random, said, "Hey," and she's a fabric artist. And so she said, "Hey, stop by the shop if you have time." I said, "Well, on my lunch hour, I'll be in that area so I can swing in." So I swung in, and she said, "God laid upon my heart to give you this." And it was a piece of her fabric art framed, and it was just the word trust, beautifully done. And I said, what's this for? I mean, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. What's this for? And she goes, "It's been laid upon my heart all day that I had to give this to you and to give you the message that you cannot trust and worry at the same time. It's not possible." And that was all she wanted to say to me. And I was so floored by that. I mean, I broke down in tears and just gave her a big hug,
Sure.
because at that time I was going through a very, very difficult time personally, and there was no way for her to have known that. You used the word trust several times, and that just kept popping in my head. You can't trust and worry at the same time. And I try and remember to toss that out every once in a while, because I think folks need reminded of that.
That is important. And that again goes back to the whole idea is, how do you get over your fears? How do you move forward? When we are young children, we're fearful of monsters under our bed, monsters in the closet. We're fearful that we're not going to get a cookie, after dinner, right? Our fears evolve as we grow. And as we get older, our fears change. Well, I'll tell you this, sometimes I wish I could go back to being 2 or 3 years old with some of those fears, because they're so, looking back, if there was a monster under my bed, I'd be like, "Hey, come on out, let's go play, let's go talk," like, why was I so afraid of that little guy, right? But that trust factor, I like how you phrased it, right? The trust in it's interesting. Most people don't trust themselves. They have to rely on others for comfort, others to guide them through. And that what makes it harder, because then you're not doing your own independent thinking. You're waiting for others to tell you how to live life, how to handle certain situations. For many of the listeners, I'm sure you have spouses or partners that are always asking you to do something for them, and we roll our eyes. Maybe the next time they ask you is because they trust you to get it done. They trust you to help them through something that maybe they haven't had that confidence to build on. Little things like this is what makes my mind operate all day long. I try to think about, what is the purpose behind this? Like, why am I at this exact spot at this exact same moment doing this? If I came 4 seconds later, would I have seen this or that? And it's like interesting, right? It's like a game of inches.
No, my brain does the same thing.
Oh,
Seriously.
good.
So I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, apparently, right? It definitely, as
I
us
have done that, because
authors.
I'll be like, often, I mean, often, I'm like, 5 minutes earlier, what if I
Yep,
had been there 5 minutes earlier?
yep.
Many times over my lifetime, I've thought a similar thought like that. All right, I'm going to jump around, because that's what I do.
That's okay.
Um, you said you had crippling anxiety when you were younger, but the hearing impairment, when were you born with the hearing impairment, or did that come later?
Apparently, I was born with it. It wasn't discovered until I was 3 years old when we went to do some further testing and with an audiologist. Now, this was back in 1978, so we're going back into the late 70s where it wasn't as predominant. The information isn't what it is today, right?
Right.
We didn't have an internet to go and look up to see 50 other people with the same issue, right? And so my parents had to deal with this their own way. I had to learn and deal with this in my own. So much different. I would say a lot of that hearing impairment is what crafted me to who I am today. And those experiences that I've gone as a young kid, all the way through high school, college, into my professional life, even as a dad, shaped me for who I am. And that's where the book enabled me to kind of release some of those big fears and almost to come clean and say, look, I grew up with a hearing impairment. I have a hearing impairment. I compensate in a lot of different ways that most people, when they look at me or speak to me, they might not notice it or even recognize that there may be a little bit. And back in the 70s, a disability is perceived a lot different than it is today.
Oh, yes, I agree. Indeed. Keep those feet moving. The book you share your whole journey with the anxiety and the hearing impairment and how that's impacted your life. The loss of your beautiful wife, being a single dad and a widower, and keeping those feet I love the title of the book, by the way,
Thank you.
because
Thank
as
you.
soon as I read just those first 4 words, keep those feet moving, I was like, oh, there we go. There we go. My mindset just automatically thought, keep plowing ahead. Well, in my brain, pull up the big girl panties, time to keep going. You know,
That's exactly what it's intended to do, right? A lot of times when we get stuck, we have a tendency to just stay in one place. I've always believed that as long as you're moving, you're creating action, you have the ability to overcome, whether it's climbing over something, running through something, going around. There are always opportunities available to you as long as you're moving. It's when
keep
we get
moving. That's right.
stuck that's where that grief process really stays with you.
And that's
And
heavy, folks. You don't want to put extra weight on yourself.
definitely not.
Keep moving. Because I've said before, I've had people, and I good intentions maybe, I don't know, but they'll be like, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" Well, shouldn't you be a little farther ahead if you've been doing it this long? And I'm thinking, well, first off, it's not your journey; it's my journey.
That's
Uh,
a fair statement.
you know, and people's judgment of me, that's on them. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
Literally has nothing to do with me. Other people's thoughts and opinions of me has nothing to do with me. But I've always said, well, I may be moving at a turtle's pace, but I'm still moving forward one slow step at a time. And that's beautiful to me because I'm still moving forward. Might be
I,
at a turtle's pace, and my pace might not be for everybody, but I'm doing it my way because it's my journey.
that's exactly correct in your thinking. I call it a marathon race. It's not necessarily where you start, it's how you finish. And that goes without saying in anything that we do, right? We have a tendency to perceive others, right? When you're in grief. Well, you need to grieve for X amount of days before you can show signs of maybe life of activity, right? Or you are studying for an exam and you've got a fear of taking tests. And people say, well, you need to study for 8 hours every day to master this, right? And what happens is that people are dictating what they think, and that's okay. But as you mentioned earlier, you have the ability to just nod your head and say, okay, thank you, and then go about what you're doing. That's your marathon race that you're partaking in. And it doesn't matter how fast, how slow, whatever helps you sleep better at night. That way you wake up the next morning and you just want to go right back at it again. People are always going to tell you how to do things. And that's just because when we're born, We have people that tell us what to do. You're gonna eat at this time. You cannot have a cookie before you have your vegetables, right? Who made that rule? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Who did make
somebody
that
back in
rule?
the day, somebody made that rule a long time ago. The parents say in the little guidebook, do not feed your child a cookie before they have their
Yeah. Who
vegetables.
did make up that dessert needs to come after dinner?
Yeah, again, I don't know. That's the beauty about being an adult, right? And I think that's when we turn 18 and some of us will move out and go to college. We're like, this is the greatest thing in the world. I can have cold pizza at 3 in the morning and my mom's not going to say anything, right?
Right.
But,
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah. I can eat pizza every day if I want.
yes, yes. I mean, your health might not appreciate it, but
Right.
your
Right.
happiness will be there. But
Short term. Yeah. So
it's
where
very
can folks find this awesome book, Keep Those Feet Moving?
well. Thank you for the opportunity to share. You can find it on Amazon under Keep Those Feet Moving by AJ Coleman. Or you can go to those websites, it's keepthosefeetmoving.com and order directly from the website. It's a 8-step guide to different aspects of grief, whether it's just, again, a disability, anxiety, a loss of a loved one, companionship, being a single dad. Even in there has some opportunities on how to overcome job loss and to restore your faith in your religious beliefs again.
Awesome. I have not read the book, but I plan on it because I'm sure there's all kinds of good little nuggets in there for folks to carry with them. And speaking of nuggets, AJ, I ask all of my guests when we get ready to wrap up the show to toss out a nugget of hope to the listeners. And it's toss out something that they can carry with them, tuck in their pocket and take with them for the rest of the day. So what would your nugget of hope for the listeners be today?
Something that my grandfather coined that I take with me every single day. He said, every day is a good day. And I really enjoyed when he said that. I didn't understand it when he kept saying every time I called him up, I'm like, how are things going? He's like, every day is a good day. And now I use that. And he's right. No matter what challenges, no matter what hardships you may be facing, it's still a great day. There may be some challenging days, there may be some heartaches, there may be some other opportunities that you wish would have gone better. But be blessed for what you have because you have an opportunity to make a difference in everybody. And that's important.
Thank you so much for all that you shared today. And I know it was just a very small part of your journey, but I am positive that someone out there listening is resonating with something that you said or what you shared. And even your nugget, I just love that. Every day's a good day. It's a good day. There's always something good to be found in every single day. It might just be, you might, like you had said, going through something really tough. And there's so many that are, we know that. But take a minute, take a deep breath, step outside and look around you. There's something that's going to make you go, oh, that's beautiful. Or, oh my goodness, look at that. And then be grateful for it. There's something good. There's little nuggets of hope to be found everywhere.
Great. Well, thank you for this amazing opportunity to be here. I definitely enjoyed speaking with you and your listeners today.
Now, this is a great conversation, and I can't wait to have you back on to talk about a completely, totally different topic, financial crimes. Dun, dun,
Yes.
dun. I almost forgot. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it definitely is a unique career path, but I have also spent the last 20 years fighting the financial crimes world with check fraud, account takeovers, identity theft, and working with a lot of great people along my way. So I look forward to sharing best practices with the audience on how they can help safeguard their own assets and their identities.
And it's so needed in today's world. So thank you. Thank you once again. It's been a true blessing and a true pleasure to have you as my guest today. And I wish you a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And everybody out there listening, thank you so much for spending just a small part of your time with myself and AJ today. This is Kim Langling, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and be blessed. And that is a wrap, my fearless friends. Thanks for bouncing along with me on another episode of Let Fear Bounce. I hope you're feeling a bit motivated and ready to take on any challenge that might come your way in the coming days. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of Let Fear Bounce. Tune in each week for your dose of inspiration from my amazing guests from all over the world. So until next time, keep bouncing forward and stay fearless, my friends. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.